In this video, we're going to learn VLOOKUP and the newer function X Lookup in order to combine the tables and to create our pivot tables, the salespeople by revenue, the pie chart of the profit by region, our map chart, and our column chart. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use the older VLOOKUP in order to combine the institutions table with the orders table. So if I go to institutions table, in addition to school code, we can bring in the school name, the state, and the region. With VLOOKUP, I can actually use a judicious use of relative and absolute cell references in order to use one formula in order to bring in these three columns. So I'm going to go back to the order table. After school code, I'm going to select columns D, E, and F by clicking on the gray D, holding down my left mouse button and swiping out to E and F. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose Insert to insert three more columns, and I will call column D school name, E is state, and F is region. Now, in order to use VLOOKUP to bring the data in from the other table, I'm going to click in cell D2, and I'm going to click Formulas, Lookup and Reference, and scroll down and use VLOOKUP. We're going to use the X Lookup later. There are a lot of benefits to X Lookup, and I'll talk about that in a few moments. But VLOOKUP, you may not have X Lookup yet on Excel. And as I said, VLOOKUP can be used so that we only use one formula. X Lookup, we'd have to use a separate formula for each column. So right now I'm going to click VLOOKUP. And in the lookup value, what we want to look up is the school code. So I'm going to click on cell C2. Now, as I copy this down column D, it'll change it to C2, C3, and C4, and C5, which is what I wanted to do. I wanted to look up the school code on every row. But when I copy the formula to columns E and F, it will change the C to D and E. I don't want it to do that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to type a $sign before the C. I could also use the F4 key or Command T to cycle through, but I want my lookup value to be $C2. So that fixes the C. So when I copy it over to column E, it'll still look up column C, and when I copy it over to column F, it'll still look up column C. Now I'm going to click in the table array. I'm going to click the Institutions tab. I'm going to start from cell A2 because I'm not looking up school code, I'm only looking up the numbers. I could include row 1, but it's not necessary because I'm not going to look up anything on row 1. So I'm going to select the range A2 all the way down, as far down as it goes, so to D91. And now, super important, I have to put in those $signs. So now I'm just going to hit the F4 key on my keyboard. On a laptop, you may have to hit Function F4 to change that to $A, $2, $D, $91. Now, in the next input box, they want the column index number. So I don't want to go back to the Institutions tab right now because it will put institutions into this box. But in the Institutions table, the second column is the school name, the third column is the state, and the fourth column is the region. So here I want to put a number 2 in there, referencing the second column. And now what's very important, it's not necessary in X Lookup, but in VLOOKUP you must put the false in here or the number 0 in order to make sure that you get an exact match. Now, when I do this, the only difference in the formula in column E, everything is the same except the column index number is number 3, And in column F, once again, everything is the same, except the column index number is 4. So I'm going to hit enter to accept the formula. I'm going to copy it out to columns E and F, and once again I'm going to get Athens State and Athens State. So I'm going to double click the formula in column E, and I'm going to change that column index number, the number right before the false. So I'm going to change that number from a 2 to a 3. And notice now I get Alabama. And in cell F2, I'm going to double click, and now I'm going to change the 2 to the number 4, which should give me the region. And notice I have the Southeast. Now all I have to do is select the range D2 to F2 and just double click that fill handle. Again, notice my skinny plus, not the 4-headed arrow, but the skinny plus on the bottom right hand side, that little box. Once I get my skinny plus, I just double click, and now I have filled in all of the school names, states, and regions. Now we're going to do the same thing for the products, and we're going to do the same thing for the salesperson. But this time what I'm going to use is I'm going to use X Lookup instead of VLOOKUP. So now for products, I'm going to click the product table, and what we want to bring in for each product is the book name, the cost per book, and the price per book. So I'm going to go back to the Orders tab, and this time we're going to use X Lookup. There are some benefits to X Lookup. One of the biggest benefits to X Lookup is you don't have to have a table arrangement. So when I go back to institutions, if the school code isn't the left-hand column, let's say it was in between the school name and the state, I wouldn't be able to use VLOOKUP, but I could use X Lookup because VLOOKUP looks up the lookup value in the left-hand column. So X Lookup is a little bit more flexible. Another benefit of X Lookup is it defaults to an exact match. So I'm going to go back to the Orders table, and after the product code I'm going to insert another 3 columns. So I'm going to select H, I, and J. Right click when I hover over and click Insert. So I have 3 new columns. So I'm going to have book name, cost per book, and price per book. So using X Lookup now to combine the tables, which is a little bit newer, I'm going to click in cell H2 under book name. I'm going to click Formulas, Lookup and Reference, and this time I'm going to use X Lookup. If you don't see X Lookup on your Excel, it means you're running an older version. You can do this with the VLOOKUP. If you like the way I demonstrated it before, just use a different table. Or what you could do is you can go to office.com, log in with your Winthrop email and password, and download the newest version of Excel. But for now, I'm going to use X Lookup. And X Lookup, basically, all we really need are the top 3, which is the lookup value, and then the lookup array, and the return array. So we tell it to look for it in the first column and find it in the second column. So if it's the 3rd position in the first column, it'll be the 3rd position in the second column. So with this one, there's no need for the $G2 because I have a different return array. I'm going to have the same lookup array, but a different return array. So we're actually going to have to use 3 different formulas. So in cell H2, my lookup value is going to be cell G2, and here I'm not going to need the $signs because I'm not going to copy it over to column I or J. I'm just going to go down column H, and I do want it to look up the product code on each row. Now I'm going to click in Lookup Array, and in Lookup Array I'm going to go to the Products tab, and I'm going to select the range A2 down to A44, and very important, you have to put those $signs. So I'm going to hit the F4 key. On a laptop, you may need function F4. On an Mac, you're going to use Command T, and if you can't find it, just type the $ in. But it's absolutely necessary that it say $A, $2 to $A, $44. Our return array, we want the book name. So I'm going to click to Products, and our return array is just going to be column B. So I'm going to select the range B2 down to B44. And once again, very important to add those $signs, so the F4 key or function F4 or Command T, or just type in those $signs. Now, this is basically all we need, but you can see here that there's a few more improvements over the VLOOKUP. You can actually put an if not found. With the VLOOKUP, you'd have to enclose it in an if error if you didn't want to get an error message if it wasn't found. And you can specify the match mode and the search mode, unlike VLOOKUP. So X Lookup is superior. And actually, the way that we've done this, we actually can edit the formula. All we'd have to do is change the B to a C and the B to a D in the other columns. So I'm going to click OK. And notice I get my book name, Principles of Accounting 1. And as I said, if I wanted to copy this over to I and J, all I would have to do in the second array is change that to C and then change that to D. But we'll get some familiarity with the X Lookup, and we'll do it again for cost per book and price per book. So now I'm going to click in cell I2, Formulas, Lookup and Reference, X Lookup. My lookup value is going to, oh, and I would have to edit the lookup value as well to put that $sign in there. So my lookup value is going to be G2. Lookup array, I'm going to go to the products table, select column A, A2 to A44, and very important to have that $sign, so the F4. Now my return array is going to be column C instead of column B. So in my return array, I'm going to go back to the products, and I'm going to select the range C2 down to C44. Now, if I did not say this last time, and once again, very urgent that you use those $signs. So I'm going to hit my F4 key. If I didn't mention it before, in the X Lookup, it is vitally important that the lookup array and the return array have the same number of rows. So notice it's A2 and C2 and A44 and C44. If they're jogged, once again, it looks at the position in the first array and returns the same position in the second array. So if they're jogged, it's not going to match up the correct value. So now I'm just going to click OK. And we can see here. Now, if I did want to edit this, I actually can edit this. I can copy this over to column J. But notice I have an NA because there's a couple of problems. My lookup value should be G2, not H2. And to get the price per book, instead of column C, I'm going to want column D. So I'm just going to edit the C's to a D. So you can actually edit the X Lookup. So had I put the $G2, I could have copied H out to I and J. And once again, just edited the B to C and D. So I've got that edited. I now have my cost and price per book. I can select the range H2 down to J2. And once again, use that fill handle to fill in all of the data. Finally, we're going to use the X Lookup to put in from the salespeople table the salesperson name and the commission rate. So at least at this time, we only have two formulas. So I'm going to go back to the Orders tab, and we'll type in salesperson and an N1 commission. So once again, I'm going to use X Lookup to give you some practice with X Lookup. So I'm going to click in cell M2, Formulas tab, Lookup and Reference, and X Lookup. So my lookup value is going to be cell L2. I want to look up the salesperson code. My lookup array is going to be on the salespeople table. Column A, because I wanted to look up the code, so A2 to A11, and vitally important, I need those dollar signs, so I'm going to hit my F4 key. Click in the return array box, salespeople table, B2 to B11, and once again, vital that we have those dollar signs in there. Now, if I would like to copy this over to the next column, if I put the dollar sign before the L, so if I change that lookup value to $L2, in the return array, I would just have to change it to C2 to C11. So I'm going to click OK. I now have my salesperson in there. I'm going to copy the formula over to N2. I get Benjamin Hernandez again. And once again, all I have to do is change the B to a C in my return array. So my return array is going to be C2 to C11. And now I've put in my commission rate. I can select M2 and N2. And once again, use that fill handle to fill the data all the way down. Now, by using VLOOKUP and XLOOKUP, what I've done is I've changed this 4-table relational database into a flat file. So for each line, I have all the information I need. So I have the school name, the state, the cost per book, the number of units sold, the salesperson code, every single line. I have every single thing that I need. Now I don't have to use Power Pivot. I can use regular pivot tables. Now that we have a flat file, we can calculate the total cost, the total revenue, and the profit for each order. We can even calculate the total commission for each order, but I'm not going to worry about that right now because none of our charts deal with commission. So I'm going to double-click column N to make it wide enough. Now in column O, I'm going to calculate the total revenue for each sale. In column P, I'm going to calculate the total cost for each sale. And then in column Q, I'm going to calculate the profit for each sale. So in cell O2, in order to calculate the profit, God damn it. Oh my. Now that we've finished our X lookups, now we can calculate revenue, cost, and profit for each line item. Since on each line item we have the units sold, we have the cost per book, we have the price per book. So in cell O1, I'm going to type the word revenue. In cell P1, I'm going to type the word cost. And in Q1, I'm going to type the word profit. In cell O2, in order to calculate our revenue, I'm going to type an equal sign, and I'm going to tell Excel to take the units sold, cell K2, and multiply it by the price per book, cell J2. So K2 multiplied by J2, and I have the revenue for my first order. In cell P2, I'm going to insert the formula, so I'm going to type an equal sign, and I'm going to tell Excel to take K2 and instead multiply it by the cost of the book, cell I2. Now, in cell Q2, I'm going to tell Excel, I'm going to type an equal sign and tell Excel to take O2 and subtract P2. Now I can select the range O2 to Q2, double-click the fill handle, and I have now calculated revenue, cost, and profit for each one of my orders, for each one of my line items. Now I can prepare my 4 pivot tables that we did in the Power Pivot video. Top 5 salespeople by revenue, pie chart of profit by region, our map chart, and our column chart. And now since we have the fields, it's going to be extremely easy. So now I'm going to click any cell within the list. We don't want the couple of columns highlighted. We want to make sure that only one cell is selected. And I'm going to click Insert and Pivot Table. You know me, I always like a brand new worksheet for my pivot table, and we're not using the data model for this example. So I'm going to click OK. To find my top salespeople by revenue, I'm going to drag salesperson into the row area. I'm going to drag revenue into the sigma values area. I'm going to click within the pivot table. I'm going to click the down arrow in the row labels. Hover over value filters. Click top 10. Edit that to the top 5. And notice that I can only choose revenue because that is the only thing in the table. I'm going to click OK. And then making sure that I'm still on Pivot Table Analyze, Pivot Chart. And I have my same now clustered column. The second one that we wanted to do is a pie chart of profit by region. So I'm going to go back to the orders table. That's the one that has all the data that I need. Click any cell, Insert, Pivot Table, New Worksheet, and click OK. For this one, I'm going to drag region into the row area. I'm going to drag profit into the sigma values area. And where it says pivot chart, I'm going to click pivot chart, making sure that I'm on the pivot table Analyze tab, pivot chart. And this time I will choose a pie. If you'd like, you can click the Design tab, Add Chart Element, Data Labels, and Data Callout. Now let's move to our third chart, a map chart of states by revenue. So I'm going to go back to the Orders tab, any cell within the list, Insert, Pivot Table, New Worksheet, accept all the defaults, and click OK. This time I'm going to drag state into the row area, revenue into the sigma values area, select the range A4 to B24, copy because I can't do a map chart from within a pivot table. I'm just going to paste it randomly into cell F1. Since it's now selected, I'm going to click Insert. In my charts, I'm going to click Map and Filled Map. And I once again have my map with all of my states, with all of my different revenues. And finally, the last one we had was a column chart of the top 10 products. So I'm going to go back to the Orders tab, Insert, Pivot Table, and click OK. I'm going to drag book name into the row area. We wanted it by profitability, so I'm going to drag profit into the sigma values area. Where it says row labels, I'm going to click the down arrow, value filters, top 10. We're going to choose our top 10 by sum of profit. So I'm going to accept the default for 10 and click OK. And making sure that I'm still on the pivot table Analyze, click Pivot Chart, choose my column, and there we go. So that is how we do our charts using a flat file.